It's a lot of hypocrisy going on, man, and it's really hilarious how some of these Paige Bueckers fans are making her day about Caitlin.
Just minutes after UConn destroyed the Nets, the detractors began to suggest that Paige Bueckers was making more of an impact than Caitlin Clark ever could. However, are they inhabiting a different reality for someone who wasn't even actively participating in the game? When Clark faced Bueckers in the national final, it was a fantastic storybook conclusion that left many people speechless.
Caitlin Clark was trending at #1 over Dawn Staley and Paige Bueckers for a little bit right after UConn won, right? I wouldn't even say a little bit. It had to be like a 2-hour run. But she was #1, right? Ring on Paige finger, no ring on Caitlin finger. And gonna put the little asterisk. Paige better than Caitlin, just in case Real forgot. We counting rings here.
The audience figures paint an entirely different picture. One that demonstrates the true extent of Clark's influence on women's basketball. The facts we're going to offer may surprise you if you've been wondering if the post-Clark era can sustain the momentum. Are you prepared to leave?
Some of the same people who didn't want people comparing Caitlin Clark to Paige and Juju, they're doing the same thing, man. It's really ridiculous. It's really ridiculous, man. They couldn't even allow Paige Bueckers to have her day.
The scoreboard clearly stated the narrative. South Carolina 59, UConn 82. It wasn't merely a victory. It was a declaration. The Huskies had recently defeated South Carolina, who had previously dominated, in a championship game that aptly summed up Paige Bueckers' recovery. Bueckers had arrived at basketball's promised land while standing amid falling confetti and holding a trophy that symbolized everything she had battled through after missing a whole season due to an ACL tear that threatened to ruin her college career.
UConn Huskies defeated South Carolina 82-59 to win the national championship. Now, this is the 12th national title under Coach Geno Auriemma. This UConn team was kind of a prime example of peaking at the right moment because for the past 2 months, they have been absolutely
The UConn Huskies won the national championship after defeating South Carolina 82-59. Under Coach Geno Auriemma, this is the team's 12th national championship. This UConn team has been utterly unstoppable for the last 2 months, making them a good illustration of peaking at the right time. Geno Auriemma won his 12th national championship with a triumph. In the realm of collegiate basketball, this accomplishment is unparalleled. His coaching legacy, which was already assured, now appears practically legendary. Players hugged and wept on the court when the nets were cut.
This is the biggest big three, the most talented big three that I can remember in recent history. And these three just coming together, obviously with the role players around them, they have just looked like a well-oiled machine. They breezed through the tournament. I don't know if there was any close game that they had during this tournament, including the national championship game.
Strong. Sarah's stunning performance by UConn's freshman sensation had suggested the program's promising future. In the meantime, Azzi Fudd had finished her own comeback tale, playing vital minutes following her own injury battles that paralleled Bueckers' own path to winning the Most Outstanding Player award.
Paige balled out in the tournament, and before this national championship game, she had a 30-point game, a 40-point game, and then another 30-point game. And Paige ended off the game with 17 points in this national championship game, but she also landed third on most points in the NCAA tournament. So she ended with 477 points. Now, Caitlin Clark holds this record at 492 points in 17 games played. And then Chamique Holdsclaw, she has 479 points in 22 games played, and Paige scored 477 points in 22 games played. So she's third on that list. She is in great company, and she had a fantastic.
Paige participated in the tournament and had 3 30-point, 40-point, and another 30-point games prior to the national championship game. She finished the game with 17 points, but she also finished third in the NCAA tournament for most points, totaling 477 points. With 492 points in 17 games, Caitlin Clark currently holds the record. Chamique Holdsclaw is next with 479 points in 22 games, while Paige is third with 477 points in 22 games. She had an amazing tournament and is in wonderful company. However, Something unpleasant was developing online while champagne bottles were still being uncorked in the changing area. The festivities had just started when a very different story emerged on social media timelines. One that was intended to be used as fuel for a fabricated competition rather than to commemorate the Huskies' accomplishment. Ethan Thomas, a former NBA player, made one of the initial posts. So, when I asked why Paige Bueckers doesn't get the fawning over like Caitlin Clark, many responded that she just wasn't as good and not a generational talent. Now that she has won a title, which Caitlin Clark did not, do you all still support that, or is there another reason?
Paige has more rings, than Caitlin Clark. I mean, made this whole day about Paige getting a ring over Caitlin Clark. It's crazy, man. Paige going out in a way that Caitlin couldn't. A national champion. That's the separator behind their legendary careers. Let's effing go.
I suppose Paige has more rings than Caitlin Clark. I mean, it was all about Paige getting engaged instead of Caitlin Clark. Man, it's insane. A national champion. Paige goes out in a manner that Caitlin couldn't. That is the factor that separated their illustrious careers. Let's go effing. What ought to have been Paige's moment quickly turned into a Caitlin Clark referendum. Instead of talking about Bueckers' masterful demolition of South Carolina's defense or her leadership during the tournament, both fans and analysts hurried to use her achievement as proof in the continuing argument over who should receive more attention, greater recognition, and appreciation.
Ring on Paige finger, but no ring on Caitlin finger. Ring on Paige finger, no ring on your finger, Caitlin. I mean, they made it all about Caitlin, bro. Paige Bueckers, more rings than Caitlin Clark. Hey, man, this is crazy work.
Paige's finger has a ring, whereas Caitlin's finger is ringless. No ring on your finger, but a ring on Paige's. Caitlin, they really focused on Caitlin's brother, Paige Bueckers, who had more rings than Caitlin Clark. This is amazing work, dude. The change occurred at breakneck speed. Basketball enthusiasts were watching the climax of an incredible comeback tale for a single minute. Then they were engrossed in comparing two players who have each made significant contributions to women's basketball in their own special ways. Words like moving the needle now took center stage, and Bueckers' victory was used as evidence that she was worthy of the attention Clark had gotten during the previous season.
At this point, I think Caitlin is Michael Jordan, because everybody is chasing her legacy. At least that's what the fans are making it seem like. It's just crazy to me how ESPN don't have Caitlin Clark as one of the best players in college or women's basketball. But for some reason, every women's basketball player is supposedly chasing her legacy.
The sincere happiness emanating from the court contrasted sharply with the contentious and even cruel discussions taking place on the internet. Players who had just made history had their accomplishments instantly reframed as just one piece of evidence in a debate they had never requested to participate in.
We do have some Caitlin Clark fans getting on Twitter as well and calling them out. I never heard of people putting down certain players for winning a natty until Caitlin Clark didn't win. That's a fact. Paige won a ring, but every tweet I see is about Caitlin. Levels. Why y'all bringing up Caitlin? It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Like, I don't understand it, man. UConn won it all, and all my timeline shows is Caitlin tears. Man, y'all can't celebrate something in peace.
Now, some Caitlin Clark fans are now criticizing them on Twitter. Prior to Caitlin Clark losing, I had never heard of someone disparaging a player for winning a natty. That is a fact. Every tweet I read is about Caitlin levels, even if Paige wants a ring. It's weird. Man, why are you all bringing up Caitlin? It's insane. Like, guy, I don't get it. UConn won everything, and my timeline demonstrates that Caitlin is a crying man. You can't have a peaceful celebration. Something far more illuminating is hidden behind all the angry Twitter conversations and fiery takes. Hard data, even though social media activists loudly asserted that Paige Bueckers was making more progress than Caitlin Clark, the television ratings paint a quite different picture. When you ignore the opinions and examine the actual data, the difference in viewership between 2024 and 2025 is not only apparent, but breathtaking.
Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, but everybody keeps telling me that Paige Bueckers is going to move the needle in the WNBA in the same way that Caitlin Clark did. Well, maybe she will, but I know one thing. In college, nah, that needle ain't moving. That needle didn't shiver compared to Caitlin Clark.
Let's look at the numbers in more detail. An incredible 14.2 million people watched the Iowa versus UConn Final Four in 2024. You read correctly. Last year's thrilling semi-final matchup between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers and the Huskies drew 14.2 million viewers. Just that one game turned into a cultural landmark that attracted both casual fans and basketball aficionados. Then came Caitlin Clark's last match versus South Carolina in the 2024 finals. With an incredible 18.9 million viewers, it was the most watched women's collegiate game ever.
It wasn't the Caitlin Clark effect, but it was still pretty impressive. Look, I got to be honest, this 8.5 million viewers that they drew on Sunday, I'm not going to lie, that's more than I thought it would be. I mean, so I guess if we're going to give them any flowers, they drew a bigger rating than I thought they were going to. So there's that, which was the third most in tournament's history per ESPN, but it was a steep decline from last year's game and a slight drop from 2023's matchup. So 2023 and 2024 both whipped this particular game.
Was quite remarkable, even though it wasn't the Caitlin Clark impact. Look, I have to admit that the 8 to 12 million viewers they attracted on Sunday, I won't lie, were more than I had anticipated. If we're going to offer them some flowers, I suppose we should acknowledge that they received a higher rating than I had anticipated. That was the third highest in the tournament history, according to ESPN, but it was a significant drop from the game the previous year and a slight reduction from the 2023 rematch. Thus, 2023 and 2024 both dominated this specific match. Now, fast forward to 2025, when Clark shattered viewing records versus South Carolina and UConn, the same two teams that would square off. Imagine if Clark weren't making any progress. Then, these two dominant teams would continue to succeed. This is where the truth is unmistakable. 4.1 million and 3.6 million people watched the Final Four games, which included UConn versus UCLA and South Carolina versus Texas, respectively. The finals between South Carolina and UConn followed, drawing an incredible 8.5 million viewers. Yes, despite these figures, the finals were still the third most viewed. A noteworthy accomplishment that merits celebration, but it is impossible to overlook the decline from the prior year.
The title game in 2024 brought in a record-setting 18.9 million viewers as fans watched Dawn Staley's South Carolina team complete an undefeated season and beat the Clark-led Iowa Hawkeyes 87-75. Even with Staley's Gamecocks taking on another superstar in Paige Bueckers and UConn, led by great coach Geno Auriemma, the game could not stack up to 2024.
The calculations are simple. Simply put, almost 10 million people who watched women's NCAA basketball in 2024 did not turn up in 2025. That isn't a slight decline or fluctuation. There is an enormous eyeball exodus. Usually, a person shifts a needle by a few percentage points. The dial fully rotates when Caitlin Clark moves it.
So with less homes being counted, the number was 10 million people greater. Folks, in order to cut through the bullshit, I'm gonna give it to you straight up. These numbers are pathetic. These numbers are abysmal. These numbers aren't good.
Consequently, with fewer residences being counted, the total was 10 million individuals. To get right to the point, I'll tell you.
Numbers are so good. 8.1 million. Oh my God, 9.8 million. Folks, realize what this means. 100% of US markets. So that means the Caitlin Clark 18 million was 66% of US homes being included. Caitlin Clark 14 million against UConn, that was 66% of homes being included.